I found this wonderful photo of a painting on the internet. I don't remember who did it, but it was a really good example of lots of color, lots of different colors, and lots of different uses of color. How the colors put together, how one color touches another, both side to side or on top of one another. When I think about learning to enamel, I'm thinking about becoming fluent in enamel, developing my enamel vocabulary. I want to learn how to make enamel letters so that I know, how do we make this color? How do I make that color? How do I make that color? Not only the color, but is there depth? Is there light coming through those colors? So those are my enamel letters, and it's the beginning of how I create my enamel vocabulary. It doesn't matter if it's an opaque blue or a transparent purple and I'm putting them together, it's still a word. Two opaques next to each other, two transparents next to each other, an opaque next to a transparent. They're different types of words because they're going to look differently because of not only the color, but the amount of light coming through and how we see the light, whether it's bouncing off the surface of the opaque or whether we're seeing it from down below being reflected through the transparent. These are our enamel words. Another type of enamel word would be how we put enamels on top of one another, how we layer them. So is this one color or is that a pink over a pale blue? I don't know. There's not a right way to do that. There might be 3, 4, 5 different ways to achieve that, depending on what we like and what we know and what we're good at. Each one of these areas could be as many different types of words as you can imagine to get it to look like this, because this is flat. This is a painting. It's a photo of a painting, but can I imagine that as layers here? We want to figure out, how do we take what's going on around us, what's in our imagination, and turn it into enamel? To do this, we need to have our enamel vocabulary so that we can, speak and share and communicate in our enamel language. And we start the enamel language with our letters, which are individual colors, say 997, and it's a transparent green. That is an enamel letter for me. Now, it might look a little different if I put it over opaque white or even opaque yellow. And what if I put a silver or gold foil underneath it? Or what if I apply it on copper? It's going to give a different look. It's still going to be in that green family. So I'm going to call that a letter. Let's think about what our enamel words are. The way I think of it is, enamel words are either two letters, two colors that are either next to each other, so they're touching, or they're on top of each other, so they're changing the way the bottom layer looks. The top layer will change the way we see the bottom layer. So let's look at this painting, because there's so many different colors, there's so many values with darks and lights, there's so many edges, the way the words are made by putting two different letters next to one another. And there's so many layers. What I'd like to do is talk about what are some possibilities here. How can we learn how to make maybe all the different elements in this? It's pretty overwhelming to think about. I mean, I can't even imagine painting this. So to think about starting off as a project, it's too big. So we need to learn how to deconstruct, how to make things simpler and easier, and think about the baby steps. When I think about the baby steps of creating something like this in enamel, I'm thinking about the skills that are required to do all these different elements. How do we create the letters? How do we create the words? What are the different words that we want to create? And when we put the words together like this, what an amazing phrase it becomes. And then what if it's going like this and then there's light coming through parts of it? And then there are parts that are opal white, so it's just a little bit of light, and then it's flowing up to where there's an opaque. So there's a whole range of depth just within this area. Now, we don't need to learn how to make cloisonne. We don't need to do this in wires. we can make this just by painting our colors. I think of this as large grain Limoges. We're painting colors, we're painting layers. We're going to use foils to help create light, and we're going to learn how to make paintings like this, or at least little parts of the painting to begin with. Because if we can't make the little parts, how can we think about making the big part? So what I'm going to do is show you how I would deconstruct this, and then I will show you how I will take those small pieces and think of them as letters and words and phrases. And what we're going to learn are not only how to imagine it, because we've got to be able to think in enamel. We've got to be able to imagine in layers. We've got to be able to imagine using the color letters that we know, so that if I have a green enamel like this, and I see some green in my piece, I have an idea of at least what's a starting point as a bottom layer or a top layer. So I know what my letters are and how I can use those letters to tell my story. And beyond that, I want to learn to figure out how to put these colors together. Look at the different types of edges. So let's look at this line right here. This line is going from an edge right here. You see, there's not a crisp line between the dark purple and the light purple there. There are two different purples there, and there's like this little bit of blue, but there's not a crisp line there. There's a line between the yellow and the purple. So there's a crisp line there, and there is more of a muted, or I'm going to call it a feathered line right here. Let's look at this right here. Look at how there's such contrast there because of the orange, but the line isn't as crisp. As we go this way, the value makes this line really pop, but then look at this, kind of like a ragged line, and then what's happening over here? Look at how this line is just kind of gradually fading away. And that's part of what gives this piece so much interest, is all the different ways the colors are fitting together. Look at the way this color fades into here. We actually see this shape there. We see this shape, but it's not a crisp line like this, is it? But look at that color gradation, right from here to here. There's really no shapes in there. It's just a flow of color. How do we do that? What do we need to know, and what do we need to be good at to be able to create the letters, the words, and the phrases that allow me to make a painting like this in enamel? That's what I want to explore.